Hey, I hope you're doing well. My name is Henry Harrison, and we're going to take a look at the week of astrology in just a moment here. I appreciate you watching my videos, subscribing to my channel, liking this video. I do appreciate that, and I saw that I had a few new subscribers as well. Thank you for subscribing. I hope you get something out of what I have to present. Okay. Alright, so we're going to get right into the week of astrology. I hope you had a good past week. It was pretty turbulent, we have some things turning around, to say the least. Just changed some of the stuff here. And forgive me, we're gonna take these off here. Here's the chart for now as I'm attempting to record this. Okay, so let's just get right into this week here. We start this Sunday with the moon on top of Mercury on Sunday. As the only aspect, the moon is building up to that conjunction to Mercury all day on Sunday. Mercury is in Capricorn and on the conjunction to Pluto. So I expect that pretty much all day, as we're coming off of a pretty intense day, I would expect an enjoyable day on Saturday with the moon enclosed by the sextile to Jupiter and the conjunction to Venus. Probably on Sunday we have a sense about us where we are digging into things, or there are some final things coming out of the Mercury retrograde that are really becoming more knowable at this point. Put these back on actually. So yeah, we have the trine to Uranus there as well on Saturday. So probably a very different evening, enjoyable time. But we have this more obscure stuff kind of going on in the background on Sunday with the conjunction to Mercury as well. So probably be looking out for some final details about how things are changing and moving ahead as we move along here. So we go into Monday, and we have the new moon with the moon in Aquarius. So the moon is in the balsamic moon phase. It's a dark moon. It's not, there's no light on the moon from our perspective at this time. But the moon translates the light from Venus to Mercury, and then from Mercury to the sun. So we have a very short period where the moon is void of course before the moon joins the sun and Saturn. So we have a new moon with the moon on top of Saturn, and I expected it will be having a lot of these Mercury or Venus and then Mercury themes and a light on the situation, even though it'll be more behind the scenes, more of a private time. After the moon leaves the conjunction to the sun, the moon moves to a conjunction to Saturn, and will be void of course off of the conjunction to Saturn all day. So when I was looking at this earlier, I felt like the moon in Aquarius transit here would be the most disagreeable in a lot of ways, with the moon not having any support from any other planet for about 24 hours, so it's considered a feral moon. Not really too good the new moon to be in such a state. It's kind of a rocky, battered kind of state for the moon to be in. So probably throughout the day it gets considerably more intense and kind of jagged as we go throughout the day. The moon carrying the light from Saturn. But as we begin Wednesday, before the moon enters Pisces, the moon goes through the square to the north and the south node, which is pretty heavy, I think, pretty intense feeling. Kind of like a pressure that needs to be, embodied, but also let go of probably. The moon is gaining in light, so you could see some of the eclipse sort of energy get triggered in a significant way around here on midnight, but not too big a deal. The moon goes into Pisces at 5 a.m. and then applies the sextile to Mars all day, and then applies the conjunction to Jupiter a couple hours later. So we have Mars in Capricorn in his exaltation and Jupiter in his domicile. It's good because during the day we like to see the moon with Jupiter, who's a planet of the day time. But as we go into the nighttime, it's good to see the moon also in that sextile with Mars, which is a planet of the night. So I would think that for people in America, this will probably be kind of a sublime kind of day where a lot of things can really happen smoothly and not even really very not very harshly either. Mars is moving closer to Venus, who is now direct, still in that 11th degree. And I could draw your attention to the Venus in Capricorn at the top of the chart is in a trine to Uranus, but Venus didn't quite meet that trine to Uranus. It's interesting because Mercury, when Mercury was applying to Saturn, also refrained from Saturn and did not reach Saturn. We've had the Saturn-Uranus square playing out by a couple degrees here. It's now moved away from 5 degrees, but we definitely see something from that time come back, from when Venus went into shadow at the end of December, but also with the Saturn-Uranus square at the end of December as well. So, and with Mars there, that's a pretty heavy mixed testimony towards what that'll bring about, because Mars and Venus will be conjoining on that trine where they are in the sky, getting closer as we go along in the next couple weeks, but they are not they're not yet in this chart, so probably feels pretty good, and it's very different. I think there's a lot of different in this week's chart, especially on this day with the moon. So as we go into Thursday, February 3rd, we have the moon making a sextile to Venus, and it's on top of Neptune, while Mercury stations direct, and there's a sextile to Mercury. So we have a Mercury-Neptune day with the moon and Venus as well here. So probably a pretty sublime but pretty normal day at the same time, kind of dealing with normal life kind of stuff probably in a lot of ways for a lot of people. But as we go more into Thursday, the moon is applying that sextile to Mercury, who's direct or stationing direct on top of Pluto. So with the Neptune Pluto stuff, you could be receiving messages about about these things in a way that's not ordinary, or recognizing different states of consciousness, or things about reality or Neptune that kind of, in Pluto, that are more hidden. But because we have two planets, the Moon and Mercury, onto them, probably pretty visible stuff there, pretty visible manifestations. I was thinking about Neptune this week. Neptune has this ability or distinct characteristic in that it has this omnifold signification and sense about it. So Neptune can very much be an all-encompassing and an oceanic sort of experience, especially with Jupiter there as well. So, but overall, a pretty balanced and useful chart, I think, or time to go about doing things. In terms of the chart, we're not really talking about that. We're not really electing charts or choosing charts, right? So the Moon going through Neptune there, though, pretty dreamy, pretty Mercury, Neptune. So Mercury is he is also applying this sextile to Neptune, but it will not perfect. It refrains on the next day. So that's another interesting and sort of mysterious thing about this chart. So we have these two inner planets not quite making an aspect, but receiving the influence in some way. Okay, so finishing up Thursday, throughout the day, probably pretty dreamy, pretty Pisces can be like really looking at like the surface of what things really are, but Neptune can kind of be distorting that, or making it making it very difficult to understand. Or Neptune also shows you that the way things are ordered, maybe at higher levels, isn't really bearing much resemblance to the lower orders, if you will, God willing. So Thursday, it's interesting. Definitely enjoy Thursday. Probably not. It's not really afflicted though, so probably pretty good. So going into Friday, the Moon is void, of course, off of Mercury, and moves through a good alignment to the north and the south node, and the Moon goes into Aries. So we have the Moon into Aries, and just before that, Mars makes a sextile to Jupiter, and later on in the day, the Sun will move past Saturn for the Sun-Saturn Cazimi. Let's look at that on the other chart. So we have the Moon, Mars, perfecting that sextile to Jupiter, and then the Moon will move in there. So it in a sense, it kind of like takes the edge off the Moon, maybe, because the Moon isn't sort of like implicated. Maybe it is. Maybe the Moon is kind of in a tight spot here, as it's making this transition from a Jupiter-ruled sign to a Mars-ruled sign. So there's something about that I don't really understand, but it's probably pretty available at that moment. Thank God. So the Sun-Saturn Cazimi, not saying I don't really know very much about what that means. The Moon is the Saturn and the Sun are both in Aquarius. The Sun is in exile. Is it exile or fall? I can't remember right now. Domicile. Yeah, the opposite of domicile is exile, or fall is exile. So, the sun isn't happy here. I don't think Saturn really enjoys the sun being there too, but it does have that particular flavor, that character of that black and gold sort of that sort of moment. Probably the sun is the government, and Saturn is the restrictions and the structure. So probably, I don't know, a very bright moment on those topics, but I don't know. But the moon in Aries all day, with Mars in Capricorn, probably feels pretty good. Maybe to consider the Sun Saturn Cazimi, we could look at this chart where we have the ascendant in Leo, and we put Mars in the 6th house. This would probably be a really interesting moment because the ruler of the ascendant is in exile with the ruler of the 7th house. But the moon is in Aries in the 9th house, so a very energetic day. Just kind of, it has this very dark kind of more reclusive or isolated character, maybe with Saturn and the Sun. But pretty fiery, pretty good day. The moon is going through the square to Mars as the next aspect, so the moon is applying to Mars all day while the moon is in Aries. It's a good position for a lot of activity. So a lot of very vigorous activity can go on this week. And this is another day where that is. Okay. So the moon in Aries going into Saturday makes that square to Mars and then applies the square to Venus. So the moon is translating the light from Mars. What was the aspect before Mars? From Mercury. So the moon has translated the light from Mercury to Mars, and now that light is going to Venus. So probably doesn't feel very nice, or the kind of desire that the square to Venus represents probably has a more sharp edge to it, which could be pretty unpleasant. But it is a very strong desire in the morning on Saturday. And as we go into the rest of the day, the moon only makes a sextile to Saturn. So the moon is in Aries. Very constructive. I think the moon, Saturn, Mars sort of matrix with having Saturn in Aquarius and Mars in Capricorn can work well to take a lot of constructive action if you're working on Saturday. So the sun, the moon is only now in the first sextile to the sun, so it's a good light on the moon, probably a good evening. Saturday night could even be, with the moon's next aspect being to Mercury, could be more social. We have a direct Mercury in this chart. Mercury is stationary, so Mercury is sort of incidentally strong, or putting a lot of emphasis on this 1 degree for several days, which is the 24th degree here. So the moon is applying the square to Mercury. So the moon has to square everything in Capricorn, but the Mars is in a good position in Capricorn. I think maybe there's just a lot of demands on the moon during this time to accommodate different desires and needs and things to accomplish and things to be discovered and discussed. So it's very, very hectic, and probably draws out from the moon in Capricorn that we had before. But with the new moon in Aquarius here, I think it does take a more constructive role towards that part of your chart. So probably a very good week. I hope that was of some interest to you. I hope you have had a good time as we've kind of been coming out of this Venus retrograde time. Okay. So yep, I hope you all enjoy, and God bless you to gain understanding and knowledge in Jesus Christ. Amen. Amen.